see what happens. I think we're live, Carter. Carter,
Wow.
how you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, it's always nice to be with you, JP.
Awesome. So we're doing something new this week, and I'm going to just we're playing by the seat of our pants. So everybody, welcome to another Shimano School. My name is JP DeRose. I'm here with Carter Andrews from The Obsession of Carter Andrews, and we are going to be talking about destination fishing, but we're doing something new, and I'm seeing people checking in right now. We're going live on Facebook only this week just to try something, and we're trying to use their built-in platform. So please bear with us. We're going to try to do the best we can. I've got so many things on the go here that I'm trying to figure out. So if you see me looking to the right, I'm just looking at my other screen, trying to keep on top of stuff. So folks, do me a favor. In the comment section, let me know that you are watching. Just let me know where you're checking in from. I love seeing it every 2 weeks we do this, and I love seeing where people are checking in from. So if you could do me a favor, let me know where you're checking in from. I'm going to try to see what's going on the Shimano page. I can see it, and we're split screened. Carter, it's working.
You know what? I have faith in you, and I'm better you than me, because we wouldn't have gotten this far.
I just got a funny text. I will not say what. I'm not going to say what, but there we go. Nick Handley, what's up, bud? He's saying, hey, Carter, hey, JP from Southern New Jersey. So, Carter, can you see the comments here?
You know, I'll put my glasses on and I can see stuff. Yep, right. Oh, wow.
All right, look at that. Sydney,
Australia. Kevin.
Yeah.
Chicago. Yes. I love it. Kyle. Mm-hmm.
There's Seth.
What's up, buddy? A little support from our pro staff, and wow, we're gonna have an audience. We have an audience going tonight.
All right, and folks, if you could do us a favor, this goes a long way. If you click the share button, that helps it get it out to people who follow you as well. So that is a good way to do this. And for anybody who was used to watching us on YouTube, I'm going to apologize. This week we are concentrating solely on the Facebook channel to see how the algorithm works. This is just an ever-changing thing for us, and we're just trying to reach as many people as we can. There's Matthew from Corpus Christi, Texas. So great, we're seeing people checking in. So Carter, let's get things going here, bud. We are talking destination fishing, which I'm no stranger to, but you make me look like a newborn child when it comes to traveling and fishing.
Well, I don't know about that. That's nice, but I have, I believe, kind of made my career on a little bit of everything. Freshwater, saltwater, fly, conventional, and really starting back in the early 90s, I decided I wanted to do more than just trout fish in Jackson, Wyoming, and I started hosting trips with my clients to destinations around the world, and that's how I got started in really the destination travel. And it's a great way to do it if you're a fishing guide or a captain, to be able to put together a group of kind of your favorite people, pick a destination, pick a species, and go on a trip of a lifetime. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it turns into a trip every year or a trip every other year. And I mean, it's a great way to see other fisheries. It's a great way to see other countries, other cultures. And I am obsessed with the traveling and destination fishing.
Awesome. So, and I've been watching your stuff for years, Carter, and obviously you have a wide breadth of experience when doing this. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to ask questions tonight who may be traveling, whether domestically or internationally. So that'll be a big help. I'm seeing some people checking in here. Blaine Anderson, how's it going? Chris from Rockland Marine, Andrew from the Seattle area said he was crushing Chinooks on the new Vanford this morning, and he absolutely loves it, no doubt. David Harris from Princeton, Kentucky. Arai, what's up, Arai? Hope you're doing good, bud. Yeah, so Mike Howard's in here, and Ryan's asking, hell yeah, multi-species fishing. We're talking destination fishing. And so for all you people watching, this is a great opportunity. If you got a question, put it in the comment section. We're going to be able to get to them. I will pop them up for Carter, tee them up for you to hear his answer, because He's going to have a ton of great information for you if you are looking to try something outside of your, let's call it wheelhouse, outside of where your home base is. So Carter, let's start with picking areas. Like do you do more international or more domestic right now?
Well, unfortunately, because of COVID, that really did put a damper on the international travel. So I've taken advantage of doing domestic, and a lot of the domestic for about a year was really kind of the southeast and the Gulf Coast and the southeastern part of the United States, where I got to hook my boat up to my truck and just drive and fish, what I'm going to call kind of local venues, but they're still destinations. The Florida Everglades, one of my favorites. It's only 2.5 hours from me, but as a destination, I feel like I'm getting to a place that is so wild, so remote, and I could spend 2 days fishing, and I may pass another boat every now and then.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting thing when we talk about destinations. It doesn't always have to be some exotic, far-flung destination. It's, domestic is just as exciting sometimes as a big international trip, and a lot less expensive and easier to plan.
Absolutely. So when you pick, let's start things off from the root of choosing a destination to go fishing. Are you picking a fishery, or are you picking a species? What's top of your list, Carter, when you're looking to decide where you want to go?
To be honest, it's a little bit of both. There are places that I want to go, and as I'm exploring them, I'm finding new species. Other ones, I'm going to target a species. If I want to catch an arapaima, I need to go to South America. I need to fish Brazil. I need to fish Guyana. I need to fish where that fish is living. And, that was one of my bucket list fish that now I have 3 different trips fishing for arapaima in 2 countries. And, I've kind of scratched that itch. Would I like to go back again? Of course, I'd like to go back again. But there are so many other destinations, and I have hopefully it all works out with COVID this year. I'm supposed to go to Tahiti. So when you
Nice.
talk about Tahiti is going to be an incredible experience. They, like we have cattle farmers. Tahiti is fishing. That's the lifeblood of all of the Tahitian islands. And there are a lot of them. Those atolls out there, as I'm sitting here thinking about planning that trip. I'm already in my mind, focused on species, tackle. I'm gonna spend 5 days doing, offshore fishing for marlin, tuna, dolphin, wahoo, a little out of season. I'm gonna spend another week inshore fishing for species like dogtooth tuna, Napoleon wrasse, GTs, jobfish, things that I never get to fish for. They're in the Pacific Ocean. They're in that part of the Pacific Ocean. So even if I'm, fishing off of California or down through Central and South America, I don't get to see those fish. You have to get out into, the South Pacific or Australia to find those species. And then the last week of that trip is going to be on the flats, where primarily fly fishing, but fishing for bonefish, GTs, imperial, is it an imperial snapper? I think it's an imperial snapper, and some of the wrasse and stuff like that on the flats. But, planning a trip like that where I'm going to be going, and I haven't done the South Pacific. So this will be my first trip to the South Pacific. And as I think about the tackle that I want to take with me, a lot of these destination trips, if you don't have it, you can't play with it. So you need to be prepared with rods, reels, line, leader, lures, everything across the board. And, properly planning for one of those trips will help ensure your success. There's nothing worse than getting there and going, oh my God, I wish I had this. And you put together the list of what you need to do, what you think you need to have, and you're always going to miss something, but proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And that's where I really get down to it is really planning them. This trip is in February, and in my mind, literally driving back from Palm Beach today to come up here to the farm, I was sitting there and my mind drifted off on, okay, what am I going to do? All right, I'm going to take these rods, these reels, these lures, trolling lures, casting lures, poppers, jigs. I see Benny Ortiz on here. Benny Ortiz is one of the new Shimano pro staffers, and I hope to do a show with him on jigging this year. Here is the jig master. Everything from slow pitch is really his thing. I got to fish with him a couple weeks ago. That was more than a couple weeks ago. It was last spring. And I watched this guy take a fish on a jig out of slow pitch jigging out of 1,100 feet of water. Okay? I mean, that's like, who does that? Well, Benny Ortiz does.
Benny does. He's got it down. He's got it down to an absolute science. I mean, understanding the dimensions and the profile of the jigs and the pound test to fight current and depth and everything else. I mean, he really has taken it to that ultra high science level.
So people that are looking at doing a destination trip, you're here in the continental U.S., you don't have to go to Tahiti to do a slow pitch jigging, not a show, but to go fishing for it. Then he does a lot around Florida, all through the Keys. He goes, out to the Dry Tortugas. He does Pulley Ridge. And I asked him where he wanted to do a show with me. And he said, Carter, let's do it right out of Fort Pierce. So here's a guy specializes in slow pitch and saying, we can go anywhere. We could go do a show anywhere. And he wants to do it out of Fort Pierce. So I think that's pretty unique. So the guys that are kind of getting into it, the East Coast of Florida has a lot of great opportunities. If you're in New England, this is kind of a destination trip. The nice thing, Benny might correct me on it, the nice thing about a jigging show or a jigging trip, maybe you're going to have 4 or 6 rods with you. The only problem is your suitcase is going to weigh about 70 pounds because 50 pounds of it is all your jigs. But, you can come down with a relatively small amount of tackle and have an incredible experience, slow pitch or even, what I call speed jigging, that fast jigging. And it's really interesting to watch Benny. I used to wear myself out jigging, trying to get a bite, trying to get that reaction. I mean, wear myself out. And this guy goes out there and he's just kind of having a conversation with us. He's not out of breath, and boom, he's hooked up and he's got another one on. So that was an eye-opening experience for me, and realizing that was something that I wanted to see more about. One of the things I love about fishing is we continue to evolve and we learn more and more about different techniques. And then I could take those techniques and apply them in these destinations that I go to. I mean, without a doubt, what I learned from him, I'm going to take to Tahiti to do that.
All right. Well, there's some great information starting things off. Now, we've had a lot of people jumping in with part of their bucket list of places to go. New Zealand from Mike Howard. Nick Handley's asking, have you ever fished the giant black marlin on the Great Barrier Reef in October or November? Some people are saying Wells catfish in England. I mean, there's a ton of things, and I know everybody's got their things they want to do. So the world is really available to any angler. I mean, what we do is we can transfer it to every place in the world. If you had one, I know you have this big trip you have planned to Tahiti, but is there one, Carter, that you haven't planned yet that is on your list?
Well, before COVID, 2 years ago, I was supposed to go to the Barrier Reef and fish, those black marlin. I got to spend a lot of time in Panama, so I've caught a lot of black marlin, but there's something about going to, and fishing the Barrier Reef and, you're fishing for the biggest black marlin that swim. That was a disappointment. I hope that comes back around. Whoever that is that wants to go fishing for whales, catfish, you know what? When I'm flipping through and going through social media, whenever those bites come up where those guys are got some sort of prop bait and they're spinning around and all of a sudden, this 6 foot long whales, catfish comes up behind it and piles on it. I've written 2 or 3 guys about doing that. And, you know, I'm going to spend the time doing it at some point. All of them are like, to get them on bait is one thing, and that's a nice opportunity. I love lure fishing, but to find those fish and get them to respond to the lure is a really hard one. But that's a good one. So what are my bucket list trips? You know, just a great trip with good friends. And, you know, I look at them all kind of the same, whether I'm going bone fishing in the Bahamas or, you know, a trip to Australia. You know, a lot of these trips, when we talk about going to Australia, it's such a far, it's so long to go, and it's 2 days to get there. And I don't think it does it justice to spend a week. And a lot of the trips I do, I try to plan it where I've got the money and time to stay for, especially if it's something as unique as Australia, where I can do 2 or 3 locations and spend, you know, a couple weeks and really absorb it all. So you're talking about getting different species. You know, you've got, I mean, a lot of great fish. The barramundi is something. We talk about black marlin, really unique to the barrier reef, but you've also got barramundi, which, I mean, Australia, if you want to catch a barramundi, you go to Australia. And they have some now in freshwater impoundments, and they're getting 30 and 40 pounders. You've got the estuary. The barramundi is basically our snook, but in Australia, in the Pacific.
Thicker on the back too.
A little bit thicker. That's right. A bucket list trip. You know what? The next one. They're all. I love them. I am right now so focused on the trip to Tahiti because it's, you know, it's atolls in the middle of nowhere and fishing opportunities that only exist in the South Pacific. So
much to do, Carter. And one person, Ryan here, said a great thing. He said, the United States really is wonderful. You can go after your fish and be in another world. So the amount of opportunity just in, let's call it North America for that matter, because Canada and the US share a lot of things in common other than warm weather. But I can go to 10 different areas in Canada and be in 10 different countries, as it feels like. And you can very much do the same thing in the US.
So JP, this year in May, I left, and this is going to be the first 4 episodes of 2022. I left Florida, driving my truck and towing my 27-foot CV. My first stop was the northern end of Door County, Wisconsin, a little island called Washington Island. And I went for smallmouth. I grew up in Tennessee fishing smallmouth on the Harpeth River, Center Hill, even got to Fishdale Hollow a few times. Smallmouth has always been one of my favorites. It's the screensaver on my phone is a smallmouth. So that trip for me, even though saltwater is what I do, I love the freshwater fishing. I started the trip a 26-hour drive from Florida towing that boat up there. I actually went up for 5 days. I fished 3 days early with my wife. She came up with me and some friends, and then 2 days filming the episode. Absolutely incredible. Everything from pre-spawn to spawn and post-spawn fish all happening at the same time. The buds on the trees, the cherry blossoms, you know, the flowers, the daffodils were coming up, and, you know, everything was coming to life. Living here in Florida, I don't get seasons. All of a sudden I go back there, it reminded me of Wyoming, the seasons are happening. And so that was a destination trip for me, and packing and planning for that. From there, I left and drove all the way to Provincetown, Massachusetts, P-Town, at the northern end of the Cape for a striped bass. I started striped bass fishing up there, so we did a striped bass episode there. Then we went to Nantucket, and I did, believe it or not, a fluke fishing episode. You know, New England has, we have grouper and snapper down here for our bottom fishing. In New England, it's sea bass, black sea bass, and tog, to tog, and fluke. And I didn't realize how big a deal fluke was until I started talking to people about doing a fluke show. And it was absolutely amazing. And to get out there and fish with Jimmy DeGreek, who is like, you know, he is, if there's a mafia, he's the head of the mafia, Jimmy DeGreek. And to fish with him and listen to him, his stories, his techniques. It was early season, so it was cold water, and you actually had to really finesse those fish. You know, I was fishing a tranks so that as we're doing our drift, I could hit my thumb control and I could drop back, and then one crank of the reel, just one turn, I engage the reel and I'm bumping again, and then I could drop back really easy without opening the bail on a spinning reel. And then it was really, the bite was so subtle sometimes that I would actually hit that thumb bar and give that fish a little bit of line or point the rod tip towards it and then just kind of lift slowly on it, and I would have him. But
so they weren't snapping at it like they normally do.
They weren't. They were not like, you know, hanging themselves on those jigs. But it was an incredible experience. We probably, you know, I mean, we kept a half a dozen fish, and we probably released another 40 fish that morning. On the way home, we stopped by one of the rips off of Nantucket. Had an unbelievable wide open striper bite, bluefish, everything going crazy. A really unique trip. And then I finished off in Rhode Island with Jack Sprangle, and did Jack. You know Jack too, and I did another striped bass episode with him. So for me, that was a destination trip here domestically. I got to take my boat up there. I did a 4-week tour. I know it's not necessarily accessible for everybody to do something like that. We're all working, but this happens to be our job, and it makes it a little bit easier. But to take 2 weeks out and drive, and whether I'm in Florida and I'm going to Georgia and South Carolina and doing some red fishing and the flood tide fishing, or, you know, running over to Louisiana, those are really unique, simple destination trips that you can do in 3 to 5 days and feel really good about it. It's getting out of your home water and expanding, you know, your knowledge, your feelings, your friendship base. And you do it once and you're going to go back again because you want to do more. You want to see more. You want to feel more. And I really enjoy that. And a lot of doing that is also experiencing, for me, it's different types of tackle. That's one of the things that excites me the most about multi-species, multi-tackle, is having so much at my dispense that I can use and all the different techniques. That trip that I did, between the freshwater stuff, the schooling stripers, the fluke fishing, and then, you know, trophy stripers, I took on that trip, 40 rods and all the lures and everything that has to go along with all that. I mean, I'm packing, it's just, it takes me, 3 days of, 5-7 hour days of organizing and putting it all together. And when I say organizing it, I use containers that, these 2 boxes are all freshwater. I say boxes, I use, personally, I like to use those Yeti boxes that are out now that I literally, that's it, the Go box. Yep. And I have everything lined up in it, from here's my freshwater ones, here are my hard baits, here are my soft baits. And then I have, for my saltwater stuff, here's my, trolling lures, here's my casting lures, here are my poppers, here are my jigs, and wherever I'm going and whatever I'm doing. So all that stuff is kind of pre-organized depending on what I want to do. But when it comes down to going on to a destination, it's all simplified. It's already done. Same thing with my rods and reels. I have rods and reels that I use specifically for certain techniques, but also, more importantly, I think you have my rods set up for the weight, the size and weight of the lures. and then the fish species that I'm fishing for. So I might have the same rod and reel that I catch cobia and striped bass on because I'm throwing a very similar size bait. I like to, right now our tackle is so good. Shimano is producing rods and reels that have, that can be used across the board for a lot of different things instead of, I have to change up too much. I really like to focus on what's comfortable throwing that bait. I know that I can still land a 30-pound striper or a 30-pound cobia, but I want the rod that's going to throw, a 6-inch jerk bait or a top water bait or a 3-ounce jig. And that's how I kind of organize my rods, not necessarily. Some of it is definitely by technique, because we obviously have, jigging rods, popping rods. I have my live bait rods, but a lot of my general casting rods I have organized specifically for the size of the lures that I'm fishing. Because to be honest with you, catching a 30-pound fish on a 3,000 or 5,000 class reel these days is not uncommon. It's easy. It's just, right?
Yep,
But
absolutely.
the difference is line capacity, and then also, a rod that can throw it. So I'm pairing my rods and my reels together that can handle also that lure.
Okay, so my whole thing throughout doing breaking boundaries has been taking what I know as a bass angler in freshwater and applying it to the salt world. So give me examples on your side. Are there things that you've learned being a saltwater guy that you've brought to freshwater and had some success? And this is right along what Blaine is asking.
Well, I think this is my favorite part of it, is finding yourself in a destination, whether it's saltwater or freshwater. Not quite answering your question, but we're going to get to it. But you're in freshwater or saltwater, you take your experiences from the past, what you've learned, whether I learned it in saltwater and I'm applying it in freshwater, or I learned it in freshwater and I'm going to apply it in saltwater. That's where we as anglers can grow. And all of a sudden you do something that made sense before in a different situation, but you say to yourself, wow, I think this will work. And you do it and it works. It might not work the first time you do it or the second time, but then it works the third time. And then you start to put a pattern together and you realize, you know what? I can do this in salt or fresh. I'm looking for moving water. I'm looking for certain conditions.
There's telltale signs that you recognize as a pattern.
And it really feels good. My wife jokes all the time, when I go to someplace with her and we're fishing, and I try to be very cognizant of it, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes. So I'll be fishing with somebody, and they have what they do that works in their area very well. And when everything's working right, it's working. But then all of a sudden there's something thrown in. Conditions aren't quite the same. There's a cold front coming in. The tide's bigger. Something has changed. And what typically works for them isn't working. And I will give it the first day. And the man that I'm fishing with, the captain or the guide that I'm fishing with, I will believe in them and do everything that they ask me to do. But by the second day, if it's not working, I will slowly try to implement some different things from past experience. And, usually by the third day, if there are problems with conditions or the bite or whatever, by the third day, we have something dialed in between the two of us. It's not always about what he has to offer or always about what I have to offer. It's about what we have to offer. And so that's a big part of it. I can, you asked me what I take from saltwater and apply to freshwater. Let's take what I have in freshwater have done that applied to saltwater. I was in Florida Bay the other day, and I'd watched it a couple different times. I was smallmouth fishing in Idaho 3 years ago, kind of when the Ned first came out, and there were some crawfish baits that Z-Man makes that I really liked and everything. And I'm sitting there watching them and catching smallmouth on them. I'm like, I can catch a redfish on this. I know I can catch a redfish on this. And one thing or another, I just never did it. All of a sudden, I'm in Florida Bay for my wife's birthday, and she's on the bow of the boat, and she's throwing the fly. And we're having a lot of opportunities. So I put on one of those little crawfish on a Ned rig, and she would make a cast, and if she didn't get the fish, if it spooked or turned off or whatever, I would pitch to that fish. It was amazing how I could swim that crawl, stop it, drop it, and those redfish would stop on a dime. Listen to me, guys. What I watched redfish do to this thing, the guide made me leave all of them that I had, that I was fishing with. He was a great guy and everything. He made me leave everything that I had with him because of the response that we got from those redfish. That was the number one thing. And I was really kind of tickled with myself. And we're fishing a pretty deep, it wasn't even, some of it was turtle grass, but a lot of it was eel grass. So it was about, 10 inches, 12 inches tall. Sometimes they would be hot on it, but when I would stop it and it dropped, it would fall into the grass and they would lose it. So then all of a sudden I said, well, drop shot. And that's what you guys do all the time. I'm going to set up a little drop shot where I've got my bait suspended right level with the grass. So I'm going to put my weight on, and I've got, 10 inches, and I've got my bait. And I started seeing redfish, and I'd pitch that thing to them. And instead of my bait falling down into the grass, boom, my weight falls in the grass, but my bait is hovering on top of the grass. It was amazing to watch the reaction of these fish that, they didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, the splash is there, the plunk is there, the bait's going down, but all of a sudden it just hovers above the grass, and they would just smoke it. And the guys looked at me going, now, what is that called? So it was really interesting. Here is one of the most talented, an incredibly talented guys in the Keys, but he hadn't really seen that. And, I love watch bass fishing all the time, and drop shot is nothing new. But for a fly fishing guide, he was like, wow, man, I can't believe that. It's hovering over the top of the grass. So taking different things and implementing them in different conditions is great. When I'm packing for one of these trips on destinations, one of the problems is you're leaving for a week or 2 weeks. And how do you get all the gear? You want to take so much, but there are always restrictions, certainly on the primary airlines you're flying, but then all of a sudden you're getting on a plane to fly you to the end of the destination. And the outfitter says, okay, you can only have, 15 kilos of weight,
Yeah, but I heard from Blaine Carter that you need like a pack of Sherpas to carry the stuff you travel with.
Sometimes it's a pack of Sherpas, but worse, we go to get on the plane. We'll go to get on a plane, and I'm allowed 15 kilos, but then they look at the size of me and they say, you got 5 kilos, buddy. So this shit happens to me sometimes. So I look for lures. This is really important to me. I look for lures that are multidimensional, lures that I can do more than one thing with when I'm going to some of these really remote areas. I want a lure that, I'll give you an example, a topwater lure. I want one that not only a good walking bait, the spook style bait. You can walk the dog with it, but you can also fish that really fast, skipping on the surface, to get the reaction bite, especially in saltwater. You might not always, there's certain freshwater species like a dorado, a freshwater dorado in Bolivia will smoke that bait. He'll eat it walking, slow presentation, or skipping it on the surface. A lot of our saltwater species, they love that. So there's one lure there, that style of lure that's not just a topwater. I can fish it 2 different ways topwater. I also look for that similar style bait that I can do, multiple things with. There's one that I fish called a speed vibe that I can burn on the surface and get a really aggressive bite. I can let it sink, and on the way down, it shimmers down, or I can fish it at depth, almost jigging it. And that's where you start packing, and you're finding certain baits that, like I said, are multi-dimensional, that you can use more than one way. Soft plastics, a lot can be done with soft plastics. That's a big deal, when you're traveling.
Top to bottom, you can fish them.
What's that?
Top to bottom, you can fish them.
That's the top to bottom, you can fish them. And that's what you have to think about when you're packing on some of those big trips.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing I remember more than anything was, I know in freshwater, a suspending jerkbait will catch just about everything that swims. And the one thing I did when I went to Panama was I fished the Colt Sniper jerkbaits, which there's a ton of great jerkbaits on the market. So I would fish a 170 Colt Sniper on a muskie setup, which 8-foot rods, 80-pound Power Pro, Tranx 400, and you can, reel it, you could jerk it, you can pause it, you can burn it, you can do a bunch of things. I haven't met a fish in Panama that won't eat it.
It won't eat that. Right.
They all eat it. I guess they're called parent snipers.
Roosterfish, Cubera snapper, bluefin trevally, tuna. You're going to catch tuna on it. You're going to catch dolphin on it. You catch everything on it.
We've done 14 species in a day filming with the one lure. I mean, it looks like a minnow. And what are they all eating? They're eating bait, right? So I think that's the big thing for anybody packing, is to really do your research as to what the fish will be feeding on in the area you're heading to, and then align your baits to be in that category. Size, shape, profile, colors. Get all those things down.
That's really important what you said right there. And it's I typically like natural colored baits. I mean, there are a lot of different colors out there. I just myself like to fish natural stuff. Bright stuff works a lot. I've watched it work, but when I pack, when you look at my lures, I'm more about a natural colored bait. My hard baits, I do a lot of, treble hooks. I like to throw a lot of treble hooks, but I also put a lot of single hooks on. I release a lot of fish, so having an inline single hook is easier for releasing. You want to, when you're adding a single hook to your bait, I always go a little bit oversized, but you got to realize, you take a treble hook off, you're taking a little bit of weight off of that lure, and a lot of really good lures are balanced due to weight. And I find that if I fish a little bit bigger single hook on it, I still have that weight and I get that lure working. If it's too small, the lure doesn't quite work as well anymore. It doesn't quite get the same action. So I change that up a little bit with the size of the single hook. But that's one thing to really consider when you're on these trips. You're going on a destination trip, especially if it's an international exotic destination. You're going for a couple of things, the culture, the people, the experience, but you're also really going for a fish of a lifetime, or maybe some circumstances, just the quantity of fish that you can catch in an area. But being able to rely on your tackle, when you're putting that kind of money into a destination travel trip, you're going to, something that is a bucket list trip. It's something you're going to do, once every 5 years, and you're going to spend $10,000 on some crazy trip. Relying on your tackle is really, really important. And you being prepared for that, knowing your knots, because just because you're going on a destination doesn't mean the guides in the area. The guides are going to know the area, but they might not know tackle to the T. I mean, a lot of the places you go, you've got native indigenous people that you're fishing with. They know the species, they know the location, they know how to find the fish, but they might not be totally in tune with the gear that you're bringing. So, obviously braid connections to a fluorocarbon leader are really, really important. Having lures that are going to be able to withstand a lot of the species that you're fishing for, rod, reel, and line, it's critical. And like I said, it's a trip of a lifetime, and more than likely on a trip of a lifetime, you're gonna catch a fish of a lifetime. That's what you're looking for.
Absolutely. So So here's a question from Benny, and I know we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, Carter, but so how much research do you do? And I know you said as you were driving back from Palm Bay there, or from where you're
Palm
coming
Beach.
back from Palm Beach, that you were thinking about your upcoming trip in February, but what does that research entail for you? Is there a bunch of internet work, a bunch of communicating with the outfit you're going with? Just give people a breakdown of how they should be looking into this.
When I first decided, right now, a lot of my trips are based upon some filming that I'm going to do. Every now and then, I still get to take a trip that doesn't have anything to do with filming. It's just to go have fun. But the first thing I do is think about a place or a species that I want to catch, and then I immediately get online and I start researching it. Right now, at our fingertips, we have the power of the internet. We have the power of social media. You can find anything you want to know. You can find out the best places, the best times, the best people. That's another thing I want to touch on is finding, just because I'm going to a destination and I find a person that I really like fishing with, doesn't mean that that's going to be JP's go-to person. We all have a little bit different things that we're looking for in a trip. We have different personalities. It's different experiences. And, a lot of the places, some of them only have one outfitter. A lot of places might have multiple outfitters or multiple captains. So researching one, talking to one, communicating with one, and really, talking to them about your expectations and their expectations. Just because it's the best black marlin fishing in the world doesn't mean you're going to get a shot at a black marlin every day. And that's something you need to know up front. Ask him, in December in Panama, am I going to see 1 a day, 3 a day, 5 a day, or 3 a week? So that
if the warm water moves in, they might not be there for that week.
And what do we have to do if it's not happening?
That's right.
What are our other options? So those things are really important when we're looking at destinations. So, I think a lot of it is about, finding the right outfitter / captain to be fishing with while you're there, one that you get along with, communicating with him, talking about expectations, really understanding, because there's nothing worse than being oversold and underdelivered. So if you're both on the same page when you get there, and expectations are all the same, get rid of that up front before you even show up.
I think there's got to be a certain point, Carter, where as anglers, we have to understand that these are not programmable things. These are living, breathing animals that are unpredictable on their best day. And you have to go with the expectation that the possibility is that weather, water temperature, moon phase, bait situation, all these things can conspire to make you have more than a difficult trip. It's part of fishing. It's kind of why they call it fishing and not catching all the time, right?
That's it, man. All of those things come into play. I went Arapaima fishing, had this incredible trip planned in Mamirauá, which is in Brazil. It's the largest Arapaima reserve in Brazil. I'm going in there. I'm only supposed to be there 3 days. It starts raining 2 days before I got there. We arrive and the water level had already come up about 8 feet. 8 feet.
Oh my God.
And over the course of the next 3 days, the water came up another 4 feet. So it was 12 feet high. It's flooding into the timber. Rainy season starting. For a lot of the trips when I'm going and I don't always get to go prime time because they're booked and things are going on. So a lot of times I have to go on fringes of seasons. So the river comes up 12 feet. And my hopes were to get there and catch, 3 or 4 of these fish a day. Because of the conditions, I end up catching 1 out of 3 days. But by sticking to it, believing in what I was doing, believing in my guide, knowing the fish were there, on the last day, literally the last hour of the last day, I catch a 7-foot, 350-pound arapaima. And
Jeez.
so here's the example of a fish of a lifetime, a destination trip. You know what? It could have gone the other way. It might not have rained at all, and I could have been catching, 5 or 7 fish a day and 100 to 200 pound, maybe a shot at a giant. I ended up getting a giant, but I just, stick with it. But you never know when things are going to change. And then you start talking about salt water, and you've got weather conditions, you got tide conditions. You just mentioned warm water. There's nothing there. That's the kiss of death. And I went from my experience being in the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean, and when I moved to Panama and started fishing in Panama, and you could rely on something for weeks at a time in the Atlantic, but then all of a sudden in Panama, the currents were so big and would change. One day you would go out there, it's beautiful, beautiful water, everything's great. The next day you go out there, temperatures change, 6 degrees, and you've got shit water. And it may be there for it's 5 days. For the next group of guests that you have, it's over. It's not even.
Or you send a boat out looking for them, which could be another 20, 30, 40 miles of running. Yep.
So part of that is, when we talk about the destination travel, it's you got to be patient with it. Most of the big international trips there are some things that can happen, but proper planning, really looking into it, finding the seasons, talk to multiple outfitters if there are multiple outfitters in the area. I'll use, Guatemala, for example, and those guys fishing out of Guatemala, there are, 3 or 5 different great lodges, great resorts down there, and talk to them and see what they have to offer. It's not just the fishing, it's also the accommodations. It's the boats. What are you looking for? What kind of experience do you want? What kind of boat do you want to be in? And have all that stuff ahead of time,
Yep. Yep. Go in there with no surprises, right? I like to have a target in mind, especially when you're traveling. And Carter, when you head out with a film crew, nothing is cheap, right? You've got bills to pay, whether you catch them or not. And so I have an intention. Every place I go, there's an intention, but there's always a fallback, because at the end of the day, you want to catch, and there's no sense pushing the envelope on certain things when they're not going. When the stars and moon don't align, there's absolutely there's no point in pushing that envelope. Now, on the flip side, what I also find is your example of catching a 350-pound arapaima tells a great story of perseverance and the truth about fishing. Because you see too many fishing shows out there that it's white flash hook set. Oh, I caught 50 fish today. They don't tell you it took them 3 days to do it. And they give an unreal sense or an unrealistic sense to an angler of what fishing should be like all the time. It's not always like that. There are days where it's like that, but it's not always like that. Fishing is a living thing. It doesn't always work out the way you want to plan it. You got to be adaptable.
And you've got to be adaptable, willing to change, willing to literally change species in the trip. I had people that would come to Panama and all they want to do is marlin fish. And I'd be like, guys, you know what? You're here. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to try, but it's not happening. The water conditions aren't right. But we can go inshore fishing right now, and you're going to catch a 60-pound cubera. You're going to throw a spinning rod, and you're going to catch a 30-pound rooster fish. You're going to see shorelines that you only dream about. And all of a sudden, they saw the effort that I put in for the marlin. They realized the first day they just thought it was bad. The second day they're like, well, there's no bait out here, so maybe the guy's kind of right. And, by the third day, they're like, yeah, you know what? Let's go try that other stuff. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow, man, look at everything else that's here. So we've been talking about destinations a little bit. I want to talk about a little bit about the packing for it, because I think this is an important part of it when you're about to go on a trip. All right. There are a lot of great destinations. And guys, I'm willing to talk on the phone. I'm willing to, I don't text very good. And I type with two fingers. So I'd much rather talk on the phone. And I'm very willing to give my number to people to talk about it. So just message me on any of the social media platforms if you want to talk further about destinations. And, you know, over the years, I have friends, people that I know almost everywhere for fishing, whether I'm bluefin tuna fishing in Nova Scotia, salmon fishing in Russia, you know, the barrier reef, even though I didn't get to do my black marlin stuff, I got them there. I mean, I just have a lot, so I can help with you, any of you with that. But I want to talk about packing for one of these trips, because that's one thing that I've learned. Like I said, just being prepared. A lot of places have gear, but a lot of places also have shitty gear. And, you know, they're not really quite ready for you. And the more remote it is, the worse the gear is. So a lot of the trips, you know, something like Papua New Guinea, you better be taking your own gear, because you're not getting anything from them. And what you're getting from them, you're just gonna be so upset about. And, you know, some of these trips, if you plan right, you know, you can, you know, and you're thinking about the rods and the reels and the usage of them, you know, for the most part, you can get away with maybe 6 outfits on a lot of them. Some of them, you know, a big trip, you're going to take a little bit more. But, and packing, I like to use, I pack the bigger the trip, the more I have. And I split everything up, all right? If I'm taking 12 rods, I usually have 2 of everything. So if there are any problems, I've always got a matching pair of something. Sometimes there's a one-off. But I'm going to put 6 reels in one bag, 6 reels in the other bag. I'm going to put half my lures in this bag, half my lures in that bag. I always take an extra spool of line, depending on what species and what type of, you know, braid, whether I'm primarily using 30 and 40 pound or I'm using 60 and 80 pound, depending on the species that I'm fishing for. I'll always have one extra spool. I go overboard on my fluorocarbon, just because, you know what, all of a sudden a finicky situation may show up and you need to have lighter fluorocarbon than you thought, or the opportunity's there and you use something heavier. And whatever you don't have, leave with the boys. I leave stuff with people a lot, you know, and next time you go back there, they remember that. My lures, I pack half my lures in one bag, half my lures in the other bag. Rods, right now, we're really fortunate. I think most airlines, for the initial stages of airlines, it's 90 inches, so it's a 7.5 foot rod. Some of them you can get away with a little bit more. A great example, though, here is the Oshia, the poppin' rods, or the grappler. They now have a 2-piece rod. For those of you that don't know about it, for traveling, the 2-piece rod comes apart in front of the reel seat. All right, so the 1 piece is just really the butt of the rod, okay, and the front grip right here, and then the rest of my rod is, you know, a 6.5 foot piece. So it easily fits within the parameters of that. That Oshia, this happens to be a little bit lighter one that I fish like a 14,000 class reel on. And it's really comfortable for catching everything from, you know, a 200-pound tarpon to a 300-pound tuna on that. And then we have rods that are even bigger, but that's when you talk about traveling. I have a lot of 7 and 7.5 foot rods, but when you want to have a bigger rod, a poppin' rod. When I say poppin' rod, it's more than just throwing poppers. It's also, you know, you're throwing swimming lures on that. You're throwing, you know, your big baits that are, you know, 3 and 4 ounce baits. And poppers, I love a popper. Who doesn't like a topwater bite? But I'll be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to throw something subsurface because it produces better. The right situation, you're going to get a great topwater bite. But when you're out there and you're looking and you're fishing a shoreline or whatever, how often do you see a fish blow it up on the surface? Sometimes you do, but the rest of the time they're feeding subsurface. They're down there eating. So I like to fish swimming lures. I like to fish jigs. I like to fish subsurface. if a topwater bite's happening, I'll be the first person to fish topwater. When I'm packing my rods, I either like to have them in a rod sock that I put them in, or I'll roll them also. I roll them in a sheet. So I'll put one in, I'll roll it 2 times over, I'll lay another one in, and I always do a butt to tip and tip to butt. So I've got the, you never know what the airlines is going to do, but I've always got, the part of the butt of the rod up by the tip, so I'm helping protect the tip of those rods. Because no matter what, somebody's going to pull your rods out of your case. They might not put them back in right. You never know what's going to go on. So to keep them together, I'll either put a zip tie around or I use rubber bands. I take rubber bands everywhere with me because I use rubber bands, whether it's to keep my line on my reel right there, or I use rubber bands for rigger releases. I use rubber bands for my live bait. I use rubber bands all the time. But, you're packing for a trip, split everything up. Don't count on everything in one bag, one box. You're allowed to, if you're going with a buddy, each one of you, split it up in your bags. It's really important because you know what? You might show up at that destination and one of the bags doesn't make it. And there's nothing worse than not having one of the bags. So think about how you can do it. I like to. It's not always possible. If it's a really big trip, I'm filming. I have a lot of money invested in it. I try to fly at least business class because then I get multiple bags. I have priority bag tags on it. So if you're already spending a lot of money for the trip, it's a trip of a lifetime, try to do something a little bit more with your travel plans to ensure that you're going to have your stuff. I do that all the time just because I don't want to show up without my stuff. In a lot of places. But so packing is really an important part of it. And, as much as I take, the interest in my rods and my reels and my tackle, I also talk about my glasses and, having a good water bottle. I'll never tell you how many times, one of my Yeti water bottles, that's become, I'm carrying it on the plane, first of all, taking it with me, but having a good water bottle because you show up in some place and, hopefully they've got water. You might not have enough water. I'm always leaving. When I leave my hotel room, I got water in that thing. So no matter what, it's in my little carry-on bag that's in the boat for the day. And just because the boat only put, 6 bottles of water in there for the whole day, I've got another bottle no matter what. As you've got your sunscreen, you got your extra glasses, just proper planning. And think about it, because when you're there at those remote locations, you don't have the option of going down to the store and getting something. I got to say that more than anything. And make yourself comfortable and have what you need. So.
Well, one thing I can add to that, Carter, and I've experienced this a couple times, is speak to your airline about what you can and cannot carry on. I always carry my reels with me in my carry-on. But what will happen is, like, if I go to Panama, I can put them in Toronto, I can put them in my carry-on, and TSA.
But in Panama, they won't let you bring them back in your carry-on.
Panama, they'll tell you can't bring them back, so then you got to check that baggage. So just make sure you do a little bit of research as to where you're traveling on both sides, because just because Delta lets you put them on the plane in North America does not mean that Delta is going to let you put them on the plane in Panama, because it's Panama's TSA that dictates what you can and cannot put on the plane.
That's happened to me plenty of times.
Yes.
And I'm fortunate enough to have my Stellas, and let me tell you, when they tell you that you've got to put your Stellas and that you're not carrying them on, and they're serious about it, and I got 12 of them that are now all of a sudden are going back in the hull of the plane. I mean, so I get it. You're right. Check with them. Check with the length of the rod too. I'm really happy to say, for those of you that are, doing a lot of casting and whatnot, these rods, whether it's the Grappler or the Oshia, that's a great rod. It's not necessarily the light inshore rod that you want to be using, but some of the heavier rods, they do have some lighter inshore rods. But, I'm a little bit more about kind of a 7.5 foot rod when I'm inshore fishing. And I'm way into fast action rods. And I want something that, just like my lures that I can do multiple things with, I want rods that I can do multiple things with.
So Carter, for most people, they're not going to be able to, take 6, 8, 10 combos with them. Give me one, your most popular spinning combo and your most popular conventional combo that you would take on a trip to saltwater.
I just finished doing a video for Shimano. Interesting that you say that. I have my spinning setup for the year, and that's what I did the video on, is a 6,000 class reel. It happens to be a Stella, but whether it's a Saragossa or a twin power, it's a 6,000 class reel. And then we have the new Terramar double X's. And there's a 7.5-foot rod in that model, a 7.5-foot rod, and you want me to go get it?
If you want, absolutely.
I'm going to go get it, because that is kind of gone from, I have caught everything from, 80-pound tarpon on that, and, all of my cobia this year. I caught blackfin tuna. I mean, that's been my go-to rod for the year. So I'm coming right back. Hold on.
All right. Well, Carter grabs his one rod that's his go-to. From my respect, I can tell you that a 7.6 medium heavy spinning rod with an 8 or 10,000 size spinning reel has been something that served me incredibly well, no matter where I've traveled to in saltwater. And then on the conventional side, a 7-foot heavy or a 7'6" heavy, something in that range with a conventional, whether it's a Speedmaster 12,000 or 14,000, a lever drag 2-speed gives you lots of options as well. So if I'm going to take my 1-2 combo, I would be right in that area. But here's Carter's number one combo.
So this is the Terramar double X. Those are new rods this year. It is I really love this rod. I use it. This might literally been my go-to all season. It's a 7.5-foot rod. It's a 15 to 30 pound lure rating, 1/2 ounce to 1.5 ounce. So I could pretty much throw all of my inshore baits on it. I have 30-pound Power Pro, a 6,000 class reel on it. I mean, this is a workhorse. Like I said, I've landed so many fish on that this year. It's the one in my boat that I pick up more times than not for most of the fishing that I'm doing. I'm not going to necessarily throw that for, maybe a 100-pound tuna, but nothing bigger than that. And then a conventional, you mentioned the Speedmaster great reels. I like the Italica 16 2-speed, and I'm fishing that on a Terramar. Maybe that's the 30 to 65-pound rod. That's where it goes to. I forgot where it starts, but that's what I have the 16 on, because I can fish that with, I typically have it loaded with 40-pound braid, and then I'll have a top shot on it. But that's also a setup that I could easily put 65-pound braid on if I'm bottom fishing or something like that. So I can't say enough about this Terramar double X. And the double X is Spiral X, high power X construction. The few things that this rod does for me, one is the castability of the lures. I love a rod that responds really quick. So when I make a cast, that rod comes back to
center,
to its true form, back to center quickly. Okay, that's helping me on my accuracy and distance. And then the fish fighting ability of this rod, by the way it's constructed, it doesn't roll to the sides. It's a really powerful rod. And you don't want to hoop any rod. You don't want to high stick any rod. So when you're fighting a really heavy fish, and that's why I say I can land a 100-pound fish on this rod, even though it's a lighter rod, I can really fish that rod or fight a fish in the lower part of that rod through the first 3 guides from the butt of that rod. And I can whip a really big fish really fast with that rod, even on 30-pound tests. So that's been my go-to for the year. Like I said, I even did a video for Shimano on it because of how much I liked it. So,
and that's the 7.6, correct? Or the 7 foot? Which one is that?
Yeah, 7.6. like 15 to 30. You want the model number?
Yeah, what do you got there? Because someone's asking actually. Power and action on that as well.
Okay, so
What do you
here
got
it is. It is it's medium heavy, extra fast action. And
Yeah,
hold on, I'm
rated
going
15 to 30.
15 to 30. And
Yep.
it's TXESX 76 medium heavy, MH. That's
There
a
you
great
have it.
rod. You're going to put that rod in your hand. Anybody that picks that rod up, you put it in your hand. And whether it's a 5,000 or a 6,000 class reel, I mean, it's paired really, really well with that. And whether you're fishing 20 or 40 pound, 30 pound braid on it, all of it matches up perfectly on that rod. I mean, I can't say enough about it. It's just.
Now, Carter, there's several models of the Terramar Double X. There's like a southeast, a west coast, a northeast. Is that which one is that?
This is southeast. Thank you. This is the
Southeast.
southeast.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So for everybody watching, I'll put up a link to the Terramar page here. But yeah, there's several models, and these models are really designed specifically with tapers, actions, and links that are popular for the fisheries in those regions, right? So that's what it's all about. Carter being a southeast guy, obviously he's using the southeast version. For the guys up in the northeast, fluke fishermen, stripers, tog, all that stuff, there is a whole series of Terramar Double X's that are designed for your fishery as well.
And the Gulf Coast has a series of Terramar Double X.
Yeah.
Especially
there's
the trout guys.
Yep, Southwest and West Coast. So yeah, it's kind of covers
West
all
Coast.
the way around for us as a fishery. And there's so many different fisheries, Carter. I mean, how do you get yourself ready for everything? It's almost impossible sometimes. Just the variety of stuff is, it's endless. All right, so we have been doing this for an hour and 6 minutes already, believe it or not, Carter.
No.
Yeah, we've been doing this an hour and 6 minutes. We have lots of questions here. Folks, if you've got any more questions, I really didn't stop Carter because he was on a roll, but this is obviously another edition of Shimano School. We do this every 2 weeks. This week we are doing it solely on Facebook, so I'm going to apologize to anybody who normally catches this on our YouTube channel. We're just trying out a new platform to do it on. So another Shimano School. We do this every 2 weeks. This week with Carter Andrews, the host of The Obsession of Carter Andrews. Next week, we are going back to the freshwater world, or in 2 weeks, I should say. So we do this every week. If you guys can do us a favor and click share, that helps us get this video spread out a bit. So if you have a buddy who is interested in traveling and wants to learn about little tips about traveling and how to pack and how to prepare, tag them in the comment section. They're going to get this video. This is going to live here forever, basically, on Facebook. But what we're also going to do for our YouTube followers is we are going to download this video and then load it onto our Shimano YouTube channel as well. So, Carter, any closing statements here on your travel destination fishing?
I just want to encourage everybody to get out, try something new. For those of you that are, we didn't even really talk about fly fishing because this wasn't really a fly fishing venue, but, whether you're, fly fishing, conventional fishing, freshwater, saltwater, find something you want to do. Go with your best friend, go with your wife, take your family. And whether it's a domestic trip and a big international trip, whether it's this year or next year, just plan it, get into it, enjoy it, feel it, let that thing grow, let it breathe. And, you're going to get a lot of enjoyment from it. Like I said, it can be as simple as going to the next state and going camping at the state park or a national park and fishing, or it can be, as great as going, to South America, peacock bass fishing, whatever it may be. Just find something you have an interest in, find a friend to go with or your wife or girlfriend to go with, and plan it, enjoy it, and get into it. It's, it's fun. It's really, the obsession of it all will just kind of grow and it's all consuming at times. So That's what I have to say. Enjoy it. Just really, really enjoy it.
I couldn't agree with you more, Carter. I hope everybody really, really gets an opportunity to step outside of their comfort zone a little bit and experience, because this world of fishing is endless. I don't think any of us in our lifetime will be able to experience everything it has to offer. And by doing these Shimano schools, we hope to encourage enough of you to either get better at what you do on your home waters or step outside your comfort zone a little and try something new, because that's what it's all about. Fishing experiences will last forever. Every fish you catch, I can remember every fish I've ever caught in every destination I've ever caught. And there's good reason for that, because it's one of those things that I take with me. And I'm sure you're exactly the same way, Carter.
Well, JP, I can't thank you enough. The audience tonight, I didn't have my glasses on. I can't read that anymore, but now I'm gonna go back and look at it. And I was serious about y'all contact me individually. I promise you I will make the time to get back to you and talk to you and answer questions, whether it's about tackle or it's about destinations. Thank you for joining us, and I can't wait to get back with you again, buddy.
I hope
Oh.
to see you soon, buddy. That'll be awesome. I am definitely looking forward to traveling as soon as your side lets us across the border. Lets all us crazy Canadians back across the border for anything other than work. I am coming down your way, I promise you.
All right, I'll keep the Traeger warm for you. You can
There
do
you
something
go.
for me, all right? Thanks,
Anytime.
boss. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you all have a great night. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.